Back here on the Gaston Gazette WGNC postgame show, driven proudly by Tendo Ford Subaru here in Gastonia. We'll let that play out a little bit. Little instrumental version of the Bobby Ray Biddle Band right here in Gaston County. That's right, folks. I told you, if you had original music and you brought it to me and I liked it, I told you I'd play it. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I kind of like this. The instrumentation is fantastic. That's why I went to work on it, stretched it out a little bit because I want to make it a little bit of bumper music. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull it down. But that was the Bobby Ray Biddle Band. I want to thank all the guys there in the band for getting that to me. I appreciate it greatly. You can find them on the 19th at the Lowell Fall Festival around 2 p.m. And then, of course, on the 19th and 20th of October, they'll be at the Long Branch in Rock Hill playing both nights at around 9:30. Certainly you can check them out. I want to make sure I've got the website here, BobbyRayBiddle.com, as you might imagine. So back here on the Gaston Gazette WGNC postgame show, driven proudly by Tendo Ford Subaru here in Gastonia. Clif Dixon will be on with me here in just a bit. You know him as the public address voice for the Forest View Jaguars, but he took tonight as a spectator and got to see a really good show from Logan Bradley and the boys down on Union Road as the Forest View Jaguars really picked apart the North Gaston Wildcats this evening by a 55-22 score. Intern Bethany's not here with me this evening or with Carson because of the fact that she was at the homecoming game for North Gaston, and like so many of the folks there was just completely pumped about this game, and didn't take long for her to stop texting me scoring updates because the enthusiasm had long since departed. But let me go ahead and break down the scores this evening for you folks. East Lincoln in a little bit of a nail-biter. That offensive machine wasn't quite working the way it's been working for most of the year. East Lincoln, whose one loss comes to Forest View, wins 14-10 over Bunker Hill. They go to 3-0 in the conference, 6-1 overall. Crest rolls Kings Mountain 43-7. Kings Mountain, the struggles continue. They're now 0-5 within the conference, 2-6 overall. Northwestern defeated Clover 49-6. North Lincoln got their second win of the season, 26-20 in overtime over North Iredale. West Lincoln, the beat goes on for the Rebels, 48-19 over Newton Conover, and this is a team that is quietly proving to everybody up in that neck of the woods that they can go and win ball games. They're 5-1 on the year now, and this team has intentions of making a deep, protracted run into the state playoffs this year. Of course, the game that I was at this evening, South Point defeated Ashbrook. It was tied 14-all at half. South Point just blew the doors off of Ashbrook in the third quarter with 27 unanswered, wins the game 48-14 in a just dominant effort, especially on the defensive end. Hopefully I can cover a little bit more of that a little bit later on. Hunter Huss gets off the schneid, almost beating South Point last week in what created quite a stir in the Twitterverse and on Facebook. I appreciate all the comments and all the repartee, if you will, that came from that game. But Hunter Huss back in the win column for the second time this year, defeating East Gaston by a 41-7 tally. Forest View, we'll talk about this in a minute, 55-22 over North Gaston. The Community School of Davidson falls to Bessemer City. I think that makes Bessemer City 3-4 on the year, 38-30 winners over the Community School of Davidson. Real quick, Clif Dixon, let me turn your microphone on. Do you happen to know the mascot name for the Community School of Davidson?
No, not quite.
That's okay, neither do I. So
is that open for any resident of Davidson, or is that strictly high school kids?
I don't know. Carson, a little research help, please. You're the research guy. Kind of need you to do some research. Okay, Thomas Jefferson, 2014 over Cherryville. This was a game that was nip and tuck most of the night, and Thomas Jefferson moves on to – they're 6-1 on the year now, and this is a team that wasn't supposed to beat Cherryville, and they did that this evening, 20-14. The Griffins defeat the Ironmen. Pine Lake Prep scores 9 points. What's the relevance to that to the show? Highland Tech gets their first win of the year, 13-9, as they defeat Pine Lake Prep. And throughout the 321-85 corridor. There is jubilation and cheering as the Rams are in the win column for the first time this season. Congratulations to Coach Jordan and everybody over at Highland Tech. And then, of course, Bandy's in a nail-biter with Lincolnton. The Wolves come out on top 30-29. That game between conference foes, Lincolnton goes 2-1 in the conference, 4-3 overall, a 30-29 win over Bandy's. So with that, we're now caught up, and we'll take the rest of the top, heading to the top of the hour to have a quick word with Clif Dixon and what he saw tonight on a 55-22 drubbing of North Gaston by the hands of the Forest View Jaguars. Clif, the question that I want to ask right off the top is, you've seen this club numerous times now. You get to see them on a regular basis. We've talked about them early on. How complete was this effort tonight in conference at a homecoming game with North Gaston?
Well, first of all, Brian, thanks for letting me come in tonight. It's always a pleasure to sit down and talk some high school football with you this evening. As far as tonight's effort against the Wildcats, I would call it about 85% complete. The Jaguars had a few hiccups, a few turnovers here and there, but overall, it's a pretty complete game so far for the Jaguars this evening.
Now, you mentioned that, and you mentioned the fact that this club did have some turnovers, and that was one of the things that didn't make this an almost perfect score, if you will, from the completion standpoint. Could it be said, would it be fair that because of the pace of their offense and the numerous possessions and what they try to do in those possessions, that 2 turnovers in this scenario is not going to affect this team like 2 turnovers would to a South Point or a North Gaston?
Absolutely. I think you can make that comparison, especially with Forest View, a dynamic offense like that scores early and often, and it's been said that you touched on their average points per game is going to rise a little bit above 50. When you've got a club like Forest View that is going to have 12 to 13 possessions a game, you can survive having, a few turnovers here and there as opposed to a team that's going to have to rely on quality possessions like a South Point team that always seems to have, 7-minute drives that grind down the field. To drive down the field for those kinds of teams and get to the goal line and cough up the football is pretty devastating, but for Forest View, it's just, let's have the defense come out and we'll try again. It's more of a shotgun offense that moves pretty quickly. So, it's not as devastating.
And to hearken back to that, you look at what Logan Bradley does from the perspective of he's a quarterback with experience. He's been, in the shotgun for a good period now, and he understands the game. And I think this is one of the things that's the difference between a team like Ashbrook and a team like Forest View. You've got Austin Mitchell, who's trying to make those transitions, who's trying to develop on the run right now, learning the offense and really getting comfortable back there. Then you've got Logan Bradley, who has been through the rigors already. And I'm going to say this. I don't think the disparity between the specialty players of Forest View and Ashbrook is as vast as the statistics might show. I think Ashbrook's got a lot of great pieces to work with, and I think the Forest View specialty players are better. But I think that the gap, the chasm between the two isn't nearly as vast as a lot of people might think. How important to run an offense of this nature is it to have a guy like Logan Bradley going 23 of 33 for 340, 6 touches, and only 1 interception?
It's extremely important. Logan Bradley, he was under a lot of pressure tonight in the first half against the Wildcats. They were able to get to him and put pressure on the quarterback, but you've got a kid back there that's composed. He looks, comfortable. He's not frazzled. He was on the run a lot of times and made great throws over the middle, reading defenses, finding open receivers down the field, keeping his head up. And it's an extremely invaluable asset to a football team to have a quarterback like Logan Bradley that can stay composed under pressure, drive in and drive out, and put up the kind of numbers that he has. I mean, like 22-33 at any level of football, whether it's Pee Wee all the way up to, pro football, is going to be a fantastic first half, let alone a fantastic game.
And certainly with that, we are hearing from the public address announcer of the Forest View Jaguars. You'll certainly hear him on occasion on 1450 AM covering the Gaston County Game of the Week. for WGNC as you're listening now to the Gaston Gazette WGNC postgame show, driven proudly by Tyndall Ford Subaru here in Gastonia. What I'm going to do, Cliff, if it's all right, I'd like to keep you to the other side at the top of the hour break, and once we do that, we'll talk a little bit more about this game. But the one thing I really want to pick your brain about is how the offense of Forest View is going to contrast by what I saw South Point do tonight against Ashbrook, and where that dynamic could be different as they play that game next week at Joe Lala Stadium. We'll talk about all that and more here on the Gaston Gazette WGNC postgame show, driven proudly by Tyndall Ford Subaru in Gastonia. We will be right back.